there's these artists that you love so much that you almost deify them, that it's like, oh, I could never do that. You know, I don't want to be that artist. I want people to look at me and say, I can do that too.
I was getting really close with comedians and I was watching them perform. And so I just started writing.
I went through it. I was not any of those things. So it could not break me because it just was not true. The passion to make a #1 band is what drove all of it, my creative, process. And that's what they became.
This is the Gaudy Insights podcast.
So can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do?
Yes. Hi, this is Cinneah El-Amin. I am the founder of Flynanced, an online platform created to help ambitious working women, who I affectionately call 9-to-5 hotties, how to earn more, effortlessly build wealth, and do more of what they want without shame. Flynanced is really birthed out of my own need for safe, reliable, and accessible personal finance content and resources as I was paying off debt and really just learning how to manage a budget and start to build the foundations of generational wealth. I just felt like there were not enough people, content creators, that were speaking to me, young Black women who we want to prioritize experiences, we want to travel, we have other things in our lives that we're taking care of, which means that we can't devote all of our energy to just being like perfectionists when it comes to our financial transformations, right? So I felt like there needed to be more people like me kind of just letting other women like me know that more is possible, we deserve more, but also we don't have to deny ourselves the things that bring us joy as we think about paying off debt, saving, investing, and all of these things. So that's kind of where Flynanced started, and it's been an amazing 3 years.
I love that. And I love the fact there were two things that I loved especially about what you just said. So I know there are other finance gurus who, like you said, they tell you cut out all of these enjoyable things. I think Dave Ramsey said the only time you should see inside of a restaurant is if you're working there, unless all of your debt's paid off. And so I love that you can achieve these things without completely giving up your entire life. And also what I love too, that you said that you're trying to reach out to everybody, because I've seen some things on some different content creators and they talk about, okay, so this is what happened with me. And now I have $1 million. And you ask, how did you start out? Well, basically my parents gave me some money and then I was able to invest that. And then it's kind of loses a bunch of people because not all of us get that amount of money. So I love that you're starting from a place of, okay, I am the starting point. I am building generational wealth. Here I go. So
Flynanced through and through. I've been getting it out the mud. So I think that's why, many people in my community trust and continue to support me, because I think, from the OG followers who have seen my growth as a creator and building this business, but also, I think I've been very transparent throughout my own financial wins and sometimes losses about like the decisions that I'm making. And no, I don't have daddy big bucks in the back kind of helping me get to where I am. And I think that's what we need. We need more relatable financial content and more examples of people having tremendous success without always having those financial privileges kind of built in. Yeah.
Exactly. And especially from women and especially from Black women. So
amen.
I love that. So I read that you paid off a significant amount of debt a few years ago. So
yes,
talk a little bit more about that and that process and how you were able to achieve that, because you did it in a year, right? Or a couple years?
Yep. So in 2020, I paid off over $23,000 of debt in 12 months. And at that point, I was very early on in my financial journey, right? So if we even take a step back, 2018 is when I really felt like I hit rock bottom. I was making my first big girl salary. I had nothing to show for it. I had no savings. And I was just kind of like, I was just overspending. Like I just, I was trying to keep up with that New York lifestyle. Yeah, we can go to happy hour. Let's go to brunch here, there, and everywhere. And it's just like, girl, you actually can't afford all of this. So, I woke up one day realizing that I had more credit card debt to my name than what I could afford to pay, and kind of said, okay, I want to move in a different direction. I don't want to feel like this debt is hanging over my head. At the same time, I started learning about the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. And that just kind of like gave me the spark that I needed. Like, what do you mean I don't have to work till I'm 65? What do you mean? Like, it's possible for me to literally create my own exit plan that doesn't require me to kind of, climb the corporate ladder or do all this other stuff, right? So, kind of I was just kind of being consuming a lot of ideas around just like financial independence and wealth building, and really kind of saw for myself, hey, based on, big girl salary that I'm making, with a little bit more effort, I could continue to increase my salary
Right.
and also, put more of that money into my wealth building journey. So that's where it all began. Like all of, I think, the things that people kind of have seen me do over the last 5 years, it really all kind of started from that place of feeling like this is not where I want to be. I feel like I can see a path for me to get to somewhere that feels like a more abundant, financially secure place. And the first steps for me, baby steps, were, I started working with someone that helps me create my very first budget. Like that was literally where it started. Bare bones. What's my budget? What are my expenses? Do I have money left over? I realized that I did. I had a ton of money left over that I just couldn't account for every month. That became the building blocks to say, okay, I'm going to start building an emergency fund. I'm going to put a little bit towards paying off some of this debt. And things just started to, snowball as I got more comfortable living on a budget, as I, increased my salary and realized like, okay, when I get unexpected windfalls of money like tax returns or bonuses, how am I putting that towards helping my future self, not just like spending it frivolously? So it was a huge mindset shift. But it was also just about like building that muscle, getting just used to kind of being consistent, having those good financial habits. And then I got to 2020 and realized, if I push myself a little hard, I could probably pay off all of this debt. And I did. And I will say, obviously we all know what happened in 2020. I definitely feel like that was like the first time in my life, for sure. I mean, in all of our lives, that everything just kind of came to a standstill. I think that period of time really helped me be super disciplined with my money, because where was I going? I wasn't really
Everybody
going.
was shut inside.
Everybody was shut inside. I mean, New York at that point was like ground zero for COVID-19
Right.
in the United States. So it was just like there was a lot of restriction. So I think with that, I just was able to put so much extra disposable income into paying off debt. So that was a huge reason. I think that, and also I job topped. I like increased my salary by $50,000 in 1 year. So, all of those things, all those variables combined helped me pay off that debt in 1 year. But as I just kind of shared already, you can see that it was years in the making, right? It was years of living on a budget, practicing that muscle, realizing like, okay, I need to be intentional about growing my income. What expenses make sense? What are the things I don't really need? Because I just wanted to kind of get to that goal. So yeah, that's my debt-free journey in a nutshell.
I like that you started with the planning aspect, because it's really important. And I think a lot of times I have felt this way in my life, but with budgeting, sometimes you feel like, okay, now I have to plan out what I'm going to buy. And like,
Yeah.
what if I don't have enough for the things that I enjoy doing? And it just seems like it's, I guess like it's drudgery as far as a task, but it leads you to abundance, because now you know what you have. And like you said, you discovered you had a lot more money available than you even thought. And so it's really
Absolutely.
down. I'm really bad about signing up for things. And so have a ton of subscriptions, and they'll just continue to, like, every month just charge. And that's been my biggest thing to include on my budget is, oh, wait,
Yeah.
I did sign up for that.
Right. Those sneaky little subscriptions add up. Yeah. And I think budgeting has a bad rep, but I think for me, what I had to learn was a system for budgeting where I was still making space for the things that bring me joy, right? So yes, I was living on a budget. I mean, I continue to still budget my money, but I'm still making space for travel. I'm still making space for experiences, so that, I'm not falling into the traps of it's an all or nothing zero sum game. I am still making space for the things that bring me joy, which I think makes it okay to kind of cut back in some other areas, because I know ultimately I'm going to go on the vacations that I want. I'm going to make time for social experiences. I'm going to try those new restaurants that I want.
Right.
So it's about finding that balance for you.
Do you do the envelope plan, or do you do everything electronically? Because I know some people say put money in envelopes and that helps you budget your money, or like stay on task kind of.
That's what I really did in 2020. I used a lot of envelope. The envelope method essentially just means that you are pretty much using cash for your variable expenses or everyday spending. So you might create different categories and use envelopes to separate out your money, right? So you might have your rent envelope, or your dining out, your beauty envelope, right? So I did a lot of that in 2020 because I think it just kind of like really made me go cold turkey. Like I was a girl that was swipe first, ask questions
Yes.
later. So it helps me just, kind of really center myself and really kind of really see where my money was going. I don't use the envelope method as much now. And I think that's probably because, like when I think about where my money goes, I just feel like I've organized it in a way where I have a set amount that goes into my everyday debit card spending. And it's kind of like, like I've kind of lived on the same amount for pretty much the last 2 years. That's kind of
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I kind of more or less know what feels right. Like, I know I can't really ball out all the time
You've
on
got a
these things, or
system.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I definitely feel like I've kind of mastered that system for me. But definitely, I really love the envelope method. I know there are a lot of great TikTokers that they just literally
Yeah.
show themselves stuffing their envelopes, and it's cool.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier, can you talk a bit about how you've job hopped and how you've increased your salary each time? I know it's a little
Yeah,
bit
absolutely.
scary. I can speak in personal terms. It's a little bit scary to leave one job for
Yes.
another and to negotiate a new salary. So can you talk a bit about what you did?
Absolutely. So, going back to 2018, here I was learning about fire, and the big takeaway from all that I was reading was, you can get to a place where you are increasing your salary year over year, but maintaining the same expenses. That's going to increase your disposable income, meaning you can save a higher percentage of your salary towards retirement, right? And I was just kind of like, I just really, that idea just really kind of stuck to me because, I mean, realistically, I didn't really know many women that did that. I didn't know what job hopping was. And when I made my first jump in 2020, I was just really thinking about it from a pure, like, I have a goal of paying off debt. I need to make more money. Like, that was really my focus. It wasn't, I'm going to be this career job hopper. Like, it wasn't because, oh, job hopping is a cool or sexy thing to do. It was very scary. I had worked at my very first company for 2.5 years. I had a lot of great relationships. I did really cool work. So I gave up a lot of brand equity and relationships and the potential. I look at some of my peers that are still at that company, and they're more senior in the company than I am, right? But I make more money than them. So
But
anyway,
how do you determine whether or not you should stay at the same company, for example, and just try to get a raise there or to get a different position there instead of moving?
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so for me, what it looked like, I was having the conversations, right? I was having the conversations. I was, relaying back to, hey, I have such a strong performance rating. Like, you know, clearly as an organization, we feel like I'm doing good work, right? I'm exceeding expectations. And when I was having the conversations with multiple leaders on my team that were the decision makers, they were kind of like, our hands are tied. Like, it's really rigid when it comes to compensation. There are a lot more senior people on the team that need essentially, like, they'll be first in line before you are, right? Being a more junior person on the team. So I think I just realized that I couldn't afford to wait. I couldn't afford to kind of just wait another year for my salary to catch up with what I needed to pay off this debt. So I just kind of organically started having conversations, putting it out to my network and folks in my network that, hey, I'm looking for other opportunities. I think definitely being a product manager opened a lot of doors. Like, it's just such a in-demand skill set, an in-demand role, that I think it was easy for me to make those initial jumps because my network was kind of just warm to it. I had a lot of contacts in the finance industry and just kind of, you know, organically through those relationships I had built, just kind of jumped to another company. And then it kind of hit me like, oh, like, yeah, this is like a really strategic thing to do, especially for someone like me that has a skill set that wants to continue building my wealth. When I made that jump, I made $50,000 more in 1 year. Like, that was significant, right? We talked about how I paid off debt, but I was also able to travel more. I was able to like max out my 401k for the first time. Like, I was just able to make like significant jumps like in my financial progress, but also just like I was just able to I mean, I just elevated to a level of financial stability that I just had never experienced before, right? Like this is now the first time in my life where I'm like, I don't have to live with 3 roommates like in New York City. Like I can be in a place where I can live on my own, right? So there were just, I feel like my life holistically was getting closer to the lifestyle that I wanted. And I really started to see that, okay, I really have to be intentional about growing my salary. And one of the best ways I realized that I could do that was by moving externally, and kind of looking to other companies to kind of fill in those gaps, right?
Mhm.
The reality is it is going to take longer to make those internal promotions. And that's not to say that this is a blanket statement, right? Because there are people among us that continue to have great opportunities. You continue to see your compensation rise. Like you're getting put on stretch assignments, you're getting opportunities to, get exposure. But there are a lot of us that are really stagnant and just kind of are stuck in these jobs, right? Where we might be doing amazing work. We might be able to do these jobs in our sleep, but we're not seeing our compensation grow. We're not seeing our seniority grow, right? So I think that's always a sign that it might be time to leave, right? If you've stayed at a company for 2 or more years and you have not seen, not only just in terms of your comp and title, but like in terms of the opportunities that you're being presented, are you given a chance to really shine, right? Like, are you given a chance to get exposure to more people? Are you being tapped for cool stretch assignments? If your skills, salary, and title aren't changing, and it's been 2 years in that role, it's time to leave, right? It's time to go somewhere else where you can, fill up some of those gaps. And the reality is, I mean, I even think about how much the world has changed since 2020 to now. Like, I just feel like inflation is on the rise. The economy is going all types of places. There's just like a lot of volatility right now in the financial markets, in the job market, that, I think many of us have thought, oh, stability, security means just staying at this job through the pandemic. And here we are, and hundreds of thousands of people are losing their jobs. So I would say that, I know there's a lot of fear in terms of the media around, oh, like this is not a good time to move your jobs. But I would just say that there's just a lot of movement happening. So don't be afraid to kind of take that next step in your career,
Okay.
especially as it could relate to helping you build that financial stability, build additional skills, like, yes, I was laid off at the beginning of this year, but I don't regret making that move a year ago into that role because I think about, again, all the money that I made in that 12 months, the additional skills I was able to gain, the additional relationships I was able to gain. Um, it was all worth it. Like, I regret nothing. So that's my job hopping story. Call me a serial job hopper, I guess. But I think I've just been a girl that's just been intentional about getting to the big obnoxious bag, and then just being intentional and strategic with using that money towards my goals, whether that's like putting capital into my business or investing for retirement, etc.
It's interesting because a lot of the things I read will advise you to, or they'll complain and say, people don't want to work anymore. People don't want to do this. But I think that everyone is starting to see the value of their work. Like you were
Yeah,
saying, I mean, you're doing the same job, but you're getting paid $50,000 more at another company. Like, why not go for that?
yep,
And being
yep,
shamed and having to, because the relationships are different, I think, with their jobs. And maybe 50 or 60 years ago, person stayed with the company for like their entire career and then, retired and maybe got a pension or whatever. But it's not like that anymore.
yeah,
So I think this is great
no,
advice for people out there in the job search and the, working these jobs. So, but what would you say
definitely.
for somebody who's getting started with that? So, okay, so I'm at my job, I want to do something else. What's my first step?
Yeah, I think the first step is to really vet out if your current company has opportunities for you to grow, right? I'm not saying you got to abandon that ship first and foremost, but I think sometimes we are not even having conversations with other teams, other hiring managers, adjacent teams to the folks that we work with often, to really see if there are other opportunities, right? Sometimes you can make an internal lateral move or an internal jump to another role, and that's a way to increase your income and your skills, and your title can change, right? So I think starting to really like have those conversations with teams that are adjacent to the work that you're doing, other hiring managers, other leaders across your company, and see if there's opportunity for growth. If you feel like you've exhausted those options, you've had those conversations, right? You've set a date and said, if I'm still in this job and it's June 15th, then now it's, I think, a good time to start thinking externally, right? And where do you start with that? I think it's really key in this job market to lead with your transferable skills, lead with those skills that are most aligned with what recruiters are looking for. So what I mean by that is you have skills within your toolbox, within your arsenal that you may not be highlighting that could get you to jobs that want to pay you the salary that you want, right? So I think a great example is the person who's always been an administrative assistant who may have had a lot of experience owning projects end to end and managing a bunch of stakeholders doesn't realize that they're doing the exact same job as a program manager or an operations manager, or some of these other roles that in industries like tech are very high paying and literally leverage the exact same skill set. So I think it's so important to like do that research. And this is something I teach inside my 6-figure skills masterclass, but doing that research on like sites like LinkedIn and really starting to see like, what are my top skills? If one of my top skills is project management or data analysis, like what other jobs are out there hiring for those skills, right? Because a lot of times I feel like as I've now coached hundreds of people and just kind of spoken to hundreds of people on my platform, I think a lot of us pigeonhole ourselves into thinking, I can only do this one job. I can only be in this one career path. No other options are available to me. But if we did a little bit more discovery work before we kind of just dive into this job search, we would see, oh, I can not only work this job, but these other job titles make sense for me. And I can then take those job titles and work in other industries, right? We have to also remember that the jobs that we work today are in huge industries, right? That doesn't mean that you can't do work in other industries, right? So what does that look like? That means like, even if you are someone who is a project manager today for a healthcare company, that doesn't mean that you can't pivot into technology, consumer goods, real estate, consulting, healthcare consulting, right? Like the industry that you're in right now has adjacent links to other industries. So explore those lanes, right? Explore the companies that compete with your current company, right? That was always my strategy. My strategy was always, well, rather than me trying to cast a wide net at a bunch of companies, let me just focus on the companies that compete with my company. Why? I have the industry knowledge. I probably have contacts of people who work at these companies that could refer me in. I probably know their business because I work for a competitor company, right? So I probably understand their business model well. All those things just make it easier for you to go into a job interview and really wow them, because you have the expertise they're looking for, rather than trying to, again, make a huge jump into a totally new industry where you might be learning from scratch. So those are some of my tips initially. I know it can be overwhelming, but I think if you start with your skills, start with those relationships you have, focus on, what's a smaller jump I can make? Maybe that just means to like my competitor companies. Maybe that means staying in my industry before I kind of look elsewhere or adjacent industries. That's always a great way to start if you're ready to kind of make that pivot.
So you mentioned a few times networking and relationships. Do you have any advice on networking or getting started?
Yeah, I think networking, a lot of people overthink it. I think networking can look like as easy as, we all come from backgrounds, whether it's educational backgrounds, nonprofits we were a part of. Maybe you were a Girl Scout or Boy Scout. Maybe you were a part of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, right? Like those are your networks, right? So as simply as we think about the people, going through your contact list and just seeing all the different parts of your life that these people represent, reaching out to those people, looking on LinkedIn, doing a little bit of LinkedIn stalking and seeing where do people work, right? If I search some of my dream companies or companies that I'm trying to pivot into, do I have any contacts at these companies? And starting there, right? The reality is you're more likely to help somebody that you know, like, and trust. And if you come to someone that you know personally or, share this connection with, right? Like whether you went to the same school or went to the same college or were a part of the same, activities or go to the same religious center, they're more likely to help you because you have a shared connection with them. So I think starting there, and I think being really crisp about what your ask is. So I always say when it comes to networking, it's good to do your legwork first, right? So we just talked about things that you can do that you don't have to rely on anyone else to start doing that research around what jobs are open, what jobs match my skill set, and really getting clear on, okay, boom, here are kind of like where these people are across my network. Then I think a really clear ask to kind of go to is, hey, so and so, I know we haven't caught up in a while. I would love to catch up with you. Like, let me know if you have 30 minutes the next week to talk about some of the things you're doing. I have my eye on a role at XYZ company. I know you work there. And I would love to kind of see if you could refer me in. That's networking, right? And sometimes, yeah, you got to do a hustle. You got to reach out to a bunch of people. I mean, it's information overload, right? So don't be frustrated if people don't get back to you on LinkedIn. Text them, email them, cold call people, go to networking events. I mean, now things are we're more outside. There are a lot more networking events, but I think it's as easy as really just kind of going in and having these conversations, really being open to kind of giving as much as you want to, take and receive from someone. But really being clear on your ask. I think that's where people get really kind of fumbled. It's just like, well, what do I even say to a person? Well, if you've done enough legwork and you know exactly that there's a role at their company that you want to apply to, that's a really clear ask to kind of say, hey, can you refer me, or can you tell me a little bit more about like this team? Like, do you know anything about this team? Do you know anyone that works on this team that I might be able to connect with? And so on and so forth.
That's really good advice. Well, if in your journey, is there anything you would have done differently?
I mean, yeah, I think that I think the big thing for me that I would have done differently is I wish I would have started Flynanced earlier.
Mhm.
So back to this 2018, that's when I first had the idea for Flynanced. Like, I'm doing all of this work for myself. I'm like consuming a bunch of content. I'm following all these debt-free community, #debt-free community creators. I mean, we didn't even call it creators back then. It was just like, oh, people making cute posts on Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, and this idea just would not shake me. Like, I could not let go of it. It was, I mean, like to the point where I would get anxiety, like almost have anxiety attacks, because I was just like, like I'm so paralyzed with fear about the idea of talking about money online. But at the same time, like, why is this idea like on my back? Like, when you have that idea that you just can't let go of, it is going to fester and fester until you take action. And it really took me about good 18 months to just build the courage to say, I deserve to take up space. This idea that I keep coming back to deserves to live in the world. It's chosen me for a reason. There must be something that I'm supposed to experience a part of this. But it took me a while. Like, I had to do, like, I was like in therapy. I was working with a life coach. Like, there was just like some real trauma I had to push by on why I felt like I just felt like I had such high imposter syndrome. But I wish I would have started earlier, because, like, wow, like I could be a multimillionaire entrepreneur right now. Like, I was so ahead of my time, like in 2018, if I think about talking about some of this stuff. But hey, everything happens for a reason. But I think, for anyone out there who has really great ideas, I think a lot of times we have $1 million ideas that we just, are afraid to kind of put out there. We just don't make time to put out there. Let my story be an example of what's possible, right? I never would have thought this idea of, hey, I'm going to start a blog, maybe an Instagram. Like, I was just doing it for fun. It was just a hobby. Like, I didn't make hardly any money. I didn't make any money from Flynanced in 2020. I was just creating to create. I was building community. I was just kind of like, just telling my story. I would have never thought, fast forward to now 2023, Flynanced is paying my bills. Like, I can pay other people. Like,
Yeah.
I'm helping people. Like, I've taught 1,000 people in a year. Like, what? Like, just it's been such just like an insane journey. But I always just kind of wonder, like, what would have happened if I would have started sooner?
I love that. And, that's pretty common. I feel like a lot of people have imposter syndrome. Michelle Obama was
Yeah.
talking about it in one
Queen.
Yeah,
So it's like, okay, Michelle has imposter syndrome, then all right. I guess it truly is a human trait.
right. But I love that you did it out of passion, and I feel like that's so important
Definitely.
because you genuinely want to help people. Like, do you have any
Definitely.
particular favorite mentoring stories, like success stories from the people you've worked with?
Oof. I think, one of my highlights has definitely been just helping other young Black women break into six figures, like being like, wow, like because of your content, because of working with you, I'm now the first person in my family to like make this kind of money. Like, that's huge. Like, that is really huge to just think about how life-changing, I mean, just how life-changing access to money, having the options, feeling like you have the confidence to demand what you're worth and get paid what you're worth. That's life-changing. I know it's been life-changing for me, right? So I think when I can just see my impact on the lives of other women, or sometimes I'm just walking around the street, mind my own business, and people will stop me and be like, "Oh my God, like you're Flynanced," like I think those moments also kind of remind me that, okay, this work is important. And, I guess that's why I continue to have this platform, because I feel like there must be more that I have to say. There must be more people that I'm meant to reach. But yeah, I think some of those stories where I'm just, I've been able to help people become financial first in their family. It's just like, I'm so excited for them to see where the journey is going to continue to take them.
I'm so excited for our generation because I feel that the content that you guys are producing is so helpful. Like you said, it changes
Yeah,
people's
it
lives.
is. It's life changing.
Right. I was well into my job, like my career journey, before I realized that you could negotiate your salary. I thought
Yeah,
when you got the job, that's just what they had available. That's the budget.
yeah,
That's what you get. But you can actually say, like you said, this is what my work is worth.
yeah,
So that's-
absolutely, absolutely.
Do you have any advice for people trying to get out of debt? Any other advice?
Yeah, I think my only other advice is just to, like, make a decision, stick to a payoff method and just kind of go for it. I think paying off debt, it just requires you to kind of think about, like, if you were someone like me that was an overspender, what are your triggers? Really trying to eliminate those as much as possible. I know for me, that's why I started doing like the cash envelope system, because just having that shiny plastic card in my wallet, I just totally would be like, oh, just totally oblivious to, yeah. But if you're someone that's trying to pay off student loan debt, right? Thinking about, what programs might be available to you to get other forms of assistance. I know student loans continue to be in the news right now as, President Biden decides whatever he's going to do as it relates to forgiveness or, uh, you know, pausing payments. But I think it's really just about going back to what I said, getting that bare bones, right? How much money is coming in, what money is going out via your expenses, what money is left over, being really intentional about protecting that gap. I call it the glorious gap, because that's going to be the money that helps you get out of debt, right? And thinking about the levers you can pull, right? Maybe you can't always lower your expenses. Maybe your expenses are as low as they can go, but we can always make more money, right? We can negotiate our salaries, job hop,
Mhm.
take on additional side hustles, right? Start that business, right? Leverage maybe other investments that you have that could be income generating. And again, just be intentional about the more money that you can make, that means the faster you can get out of debt. And then just picking a payoff method and sticking with it, right? It's not always sexy, but it's just about, day in and day out, just making sure you're making those payments and staying consistent with it.
Right. And you mentioned that now you're doing finance full time.
Yes.
You think that you
Not not by my own choice.
but do you think that you will, now that you know that, okay, I can do this on my own? I have my business. Do you think that you will work for another company and
You
continue?
know, I don't put I definitely not totally canceled it out. That's why I call myself the 9 to 5 hottie, because I like having a 9 to 5 job. Like, I like having the steady income without having to, like, you know, catch everything that I have to eat, right? Like the entrepreneurship grind is not for the faint of heart, right? So I think that as I think about just other things that I want to do with my money, like buying real estate, it's a lot easier when you have a W-2 to kind of show your income versus, oh, you are self-employed and we need to get into all your numbers and your assets and so I'm not against returning to a 9 to 5, but right now I am calling this period, at least through the summer, my rich hot girl sabbatical. So I am just focusing on building my business up, doing travel, spending time with people that I love, doing more of the things that I value before I think about going back to a 9 to 5. But it's not out the picture.
Well, what are you excited about this year? Where are you excited about traveling
Oof. I'm excited about a lot of things. I'm excited. My mom and I are taking some trips to Europe together, so I'm excited for that. Um, I'm excited for just more growth. Like, I want to stretch myself in my business this year. I'm excited for new opportunities I can't even talk about yet, but when I can talk about them, they'll be really fun. And I'm also just excited about giving back to my community more, right? I'm really trying to also create ways that, folks of all different income levels can work with me, learn with me, experience things with me. So I'm excited about that too, right? Realizing that My community is so large and so rich, but I want to also give back to folks in my community that just might need support right now. So I'm excited about all those things.
I love that.
Yes.
You have amazing trips this year. Do you want to share some of your courses so listeners can look them up and maybe sign up?
Yeah, I think the best way to start, if you are someone who wants to make more money in your 9 to 5, you're unsure of where to start, or really unsure of what high-paying in-demand skills you have, I would definitely recommend you check out my 6-Figure Skills Masterclass. It has been now over 700 people have joined the masterclass, right? So we are talking about very first steps, transformations, learning how you can discover what your in-demand transferable skills are, those top 3 job titles that align with your skill set, so that you can just have a more focused job search strategy, right? So before you start touching that resume, before you start going on LinkedIn and exhausting yourself, let's lead with your skills, because when you know that you have the skills that recruiters want, it's going to make you more confident to land those 6-figure jobs that you want. So 6-Figure Skills, you can check it out on all of my platforms, the link in my bio, my website, Flynanced.com. And I love to see you inside the masterclass.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this interview and for all of your wisdom. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have questions or comments, please send an email to gaudymediaco@gmail.com. If you're interested in similar content geared toward creative professionals, check out gaudylanguage.com. Music is by DJ Fetus.
Shout out to the Gaudy Insight. What's poppin'?